Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ashley and this is my podcast, Weirdly Aligned. So happy to have you here. Make sure that if you like today's video, you check out my other videos and you subscribe so that we can stay weirdly aligned for forever. So for today's video, I want to talk about something that so many go through, and that is the dark night of the soul. And I also want to talk about shadow work. And so I'm going to go back and forth and talk about them because I do think that they correlate and they very much go with each other. So when we talk about the dark night of the soul, it originally came into play from a man named Saint John of the Cross. And he was a Spanish poet, and during this time in his life, he was very religious and spiritual, but he started to teach and interpret the Bible in a much different way. And so the people around him actually put him in prison. And this is when he wrote a poem called The Dark Night of the Soul. And I'm not going to act like I read the whole thing because it's super long, but he does talk about how, we have to go through the dark night of the soul in order to basically surrender to the divine, right? So that you can become this new version of yourself, getting rid of old beliefs, old habits, old programming, getting rid of whatever you've been taught to surrender and become this new version of yourself, the true self. And when we talk about the shadow side, it comes from a guy named Carl Jung. He was a student of Sigmund Freud. He talked about how the shadow self is anything that is suppressed, right? Whether that's insecurities, anger, hidden emotions, all of these things that usually come from trauma and childhood that you don't even understand, that are suppressed, that are constantly showing up when you're getting triggered, when you're in relationships. And the reason I find that understanding the shadow self is so important is because when you understand the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, right? There's two different minds. The subconscious mind is the one that's actually in control. It isn't your conscious. And what happens is when you're constantly thinking negative and angry and you have these emotions on the inside that only you know and feel, right? When you go into the mirror and you're like, oh, I can't stand the way I look, and you want to turn the light off and you just think negatively about everyone around you and your situations that you go through. This gets put into the subconscious mind, right? Your thoughts are getting put there. And what happens is your thoughts, your subconscious mind is trying to create that reality for you. So what you see manifested in your reality is a direct reflection of who you are on the inside. And that concept right there is very hard for a lot of people to understand. And it's hard to be like, yeah, you're right. I am manifesting all of what I don't want to happen. But when you can do that, it is so powerful and so worth it because you start to understand, wait a minute, maybe my feelings, my actions, and the inside of me does play a role in everything that's going on around me. And so Carl Jung talked about how the shadow self is that very side of you that you don't want anybody to see, right? Everybody wants to act like the goody two shoes, I'm such a good person. But I promise you, if you're going through an awakening, and if you haven't went through a dark night of the soul moment yet, you will. And I hope that this video will prepare you for that. And if you've already gone through it, I hope it helps you understand why you have to go through it and why there will be multiple more, and how it seems dark and negative at first, but nothing in life is negative. It's all about perspective. Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit about my very first dark night of the soul moment. So, when you're going through an awakening at first, the very first stage, I usually call that ignition phase, right? Where you just start to learn about spirituality and you're getting into crystals, right? The basics, and you're learning about conspiracies and this kind of stuff. And in this phase, you are very egotistical still. You're trying to go to your family. You're trying to tell everybody. You think you know more than the whole entire world because you know a few conspiracies. But I want to start off by saying that the more deeper you get into this stuff, you know that you know nothing and that there's always more to learn. And so I went through that phase for a couple years where I was just questioning and unlearning so much. But then a couple years after my awakening, during this first stage, I was in college and I was 21 years old. And I lived with my roommates at the time who were my best friends. We did everything together since high school. We did everything together. I love them so much, but during that time I stopped doing the normal things we were doing. We were going out all the time. They were drinking, and one, I hated drinking anyway, so that was a win-win for me. But smoking all the time. I was smoking so much. I recently just even stopped last year at the end of the year. And I would just be in my room like watching videos, guys, and just it was a dark moment for me because I was starting to not resonate with those around me. But the real dark night of the soul moment came years later when I was still trying to hold on to these friends. And I had my daughter at this point, and I was still kind of holding on to my old life. And that is what Saint John was talking about when you're trying to hold on to this old life and you know that you're ready for this new life, but you're on the fence. You're scared. You're fearful of what is to come. And so I was, didn't want to let my friends go. And I was like, why does this have to happen? But I finally learned that, the more you evolve and the more that you go through an awakening, a lot of it is going to be spent alone, and you're going to lose people, not because you don't love them anymore or because they're not good people. It's because you're just on a different journey. It is a very unique journey going through an awakening. And of course, it's very hard, and you won't understand a lot of what goes on until later on because it just feels so dark in the moment. But during this time, this is when, I was just like losing everyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone around me. I had no friends at this point. I'm feeling weird. I'm feeling like, what is going on? Because this is when I'm starting to learn about more than conspiracies. I'm getting into Dolores Cannon. I'm getting into reincarnation. Matthias de Stefano. I'm learning about dimensions, and I'm starting to get into those other stages that I call the deeper stages. And this period didn't last that long, right? I'm continuing with life. I'm still bouncing from relationship to relationship. And this is where the shadow self comes in. I'm manifesting relationships, and I'm starting to notice that it's the same lessons needed to be learned, just in a different form. So new people. And so I started to look at what was the universe trying to teach me. Why am I attracting these people that don't align with me, and that I don't, I know that they're not for me. But when you understand that the shadow self is what gets mirrored back to you, right? Everybody that you see in life that you supposedly don't like is you in some way. So it is important for you to go within, right? Meditation. One of the most powerful things I ever did was childhood meditation, right? And we'll get into that in a second. But you do these things and you start to understand, oh, wait, I am not the person I thought I was. I'm not as good as I thought I was. I have all this built up anger. I have all this jealousy and hate towards people and the world and my own just self. And I don't even love myself at all. Like, not even a smidget do I love myself. And that is what is being manifested to me. That is what's being shown to me. And it's so important to understand that, because if you don't, you're constantly going to repeat these lessons, okay? You have to remember, we're here to learn lessons and we're here to evolve. And it's going to always be that. You're going to be learning and teaching, learning and teaching. And I didn't want to keep learning the same lesson over and over, right? If I'm going to learn a lesson, let it be a new one. I'm tired of the same old thing. So I decided to, actually, during this stage, I told you, you'll go through multiple dark night of the soul moments. So then the very next moment, I, kind of came back in contact with just a person that I was with in the past. And I was so in love with this person, or so I thought. And I was like, we are just meant to be together. I don't understand. I don't understand why this person doesn't love me like this. And it really put me in a dark place to where I was just thinking so negatively about myself. And, I tried to replace it with new relationships. And, I started to go more into my spirituality during this point. And I started to learn more about psychology and philosophy. But I was still so lost on the inside from not loving myself right, looking for it out in the world. And this is when I never went into meditation yet. I was just, constantly watching stuff rather than going within. And it's so important to take that step to go within. So after this period, I think I'm healed, right? I make new changes for myself. I move. I'm doing all these great things. And I'm working at this point. I'm the GM of a store. I have 33 employees. I'm making good money, but I'm starting to get so deep into spirituality that I no longer resonate with religion. I'm starting to not resonate with this whole rat race, the working life, right? I wanted to just be a mom and to step into my divine feminine energy. And I'm learning about healing and going within. So I up and quit my job randomly. Like, I just quit my job one day and I'm like, I'm not going to be in any relationships for 2 years. I'm going to literally just go within, do this healing work that I need to do. And the only way that I can do that is if I put this time and effort into myself. This is when I knew that I was supposed to start speaking like I am now. But I definitely wasn't ready at that point. And I needed to learn to love myself in a way that I never had before, right? I've never been in a place where I just didn't rely on other people to comfort me and to show me love when I could have been doing that the whole time. And obviously this comes with a lot of childhood trauma. And so I started to go into meditation. I would do, like I was talking about earlier, inner childhood meditations, and it changed my life. I literally visualized my younger self and I allowed her to come to the surface, and instead of suppressing those emotions so that they go into my shadow self, I allowed that shadow self to come to the forefront, and I just embraced everything. All of that purged out. Cry, anger, screams, everything that needed to come out, you confront it and you let it come out. And even when I would get triggered by situations or people, I started to, instead of suppressing that and blaming it on everybody like it wasn't something to do with me, I started to look at, okay, why am I being triggered in this moment? What is life teaching me in this moment, right? Because life is never happening to you, it's happening for you. I think that source, God, whatever you believe in, is we're an extension of that. And I never think that my higher self would lead me into the wrong direction. It's always doing what's best for me. And so it was truly about having that faith. And, I just did so much work. I wasn't talking to anybody, no friends, no nothing, just learning, journaling so much. That is one of the best ways to heal your shadow self and to just tap into that. Whether that's anger you're putting on the paper, sadness, get it all out, day, night, once a day, do whatever you need to do. But it was during this time, like I said, that I was getting so into spirituality that I was getting into philosophy, and I was watching a Santos Bonacci video. And for those of you that know who he is, kudos to you. He's amazing. But it was that day, obviously I was watching him for a little bit, but it was just one day where I started to basically piece stuff together. And I was like, oh my God, started to decode the Bible, and I became obsessed with my mind. And I looked at the video and it only would get 1,000 views. And I was like, why does the universe want me to see this out of everybody? And this is when I started to learn, just my purpose and what my spiritual journey was all for, and why I had to go through all these, heartbreaks and things that I never understood, all the things during my childhood. And that day, it was like it's like somebody slapped me in my face. I just instantly started to love myself. I really can't explain it. I became obsessed with my mind and who I was on the inside. And I was like, this is so rare. I love my uniqueness and, my personality and my looks. I just love everything about myself. And that moment for me was huge. And I think that once you can do that inner work, right, everything in your life after that changes, because your consciousness and that inner world is creating your outer world. It will change everything for you. So when I can heal parts of my shadow self, and it's not like the shadow self just goes away, right? No, it will always be there. It's the yin yang, the black white, the light, the dark. But when you can heal things that were not healed, and you can allow those things to come to the forefront and work through those things, it changes everything. It's a game changer. And it's important for you to understand, the psychology behind it. So get into psychology, get into philosophy, spend your time not scrolling and going just listening to negative stuff, right? I had to learn that. Stop surrounding yourself around people that you aren't meant to be around. Be brave enough to step away from that old life and, slowly but surely step into the new version of yourself. Because, that is what the awakening is about. All of these stages you go through from the very beginning, the egotistical, the ego death through the dark night of the soul, because that will happen. You will start to understand that your ego is what separates you from the rest of the world. When you can understand that we are all one, that everything is happening for a reason, it is all happening for a higher purpose that you might not understand, but you chose most of what you go through in this life. And if you didn't choose it, maybe from karma, we have karma that comes into this life. You chose to go through this spiritual awakening, and you should feel so lucky and happy, no matter how hard it seems in the moment, right? Because nobody's understanding you. You feel crazy. You might be going through psychosis, but the moment you continue to push straight through that, you will understand why all of it has to exist. And I'll read some of my favorite quotes just about spiritual awakening because they're so powerful, by Friedrich Nietzsche, and that's one of his books right there. But one of my favorites by him says, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" Right? You have to go so dark and deep within, purge out all of that anger, all of that sadness, all of that trauma, right? Because trauma comes from the word wound. It is because somewhere in childhood you were wounded and you just suppressed it and you're like, no, I'm fine. Let me just not act like anything happened. But those moments, you have to remember, this is when you can just continue to bring science into this stuff. It gets, your body holds memory, right? So your parasympathetic nervous system, when it gets triggered, right, by somebody screaming and you're triggered because you were abused when you were younger, all of these things are moments you need to look at and to work through those. Heal that part of you. Allow it to come to the surface. Give it the space it needs and heal it and let it go. And understand that the only moment we ever have is the present moment. And Eckhart Tolle talks about the dark night of the soul moment a lot. And I would recommend reading the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and listening to some of his stuff about the dark night of the soul, because it's so powerful to get a different understanding and perspective, right? Because perspective is everything. But a lot of what everybody's going to say is what I'm saying today. And you truly won't understand it until you go through it. But the moment you are going through it, or you have gone through, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you're on your journey right now and it seems hard and just dark, push through it, right? Let yourself burn to ashes and let that new you rise up. Become the new spiritual person that you were always meant to be, right? Continue to learn and to seek wisdom and to just come from a place of love and understanding. And yeah, I hope you learned a little bit in today's video. I wanted to share a little bit about my own just, dark night of the soul moments to kind of resonate with you on any level that I can. And yeah, I hope that y'all have the best month, the best week. If you're not already following me on my TikTok, make sure you do that, Ashley Eckerly _ I post there 3 times, and I'm currently doing this thing I'm going to start tomorrow where I go hard for 21 days. No negativity, no doom scrolling, purely submersing myself in whatever I want to manifest. So coming out with a podcast every week, making sure I post 3 times on TikTok, because you have to remember, and Dolores Cannon talks about this, we come here to learn lessons, but we also come here to learn to manipulate energy. You can manifest and have anything you want in this life. The programming stops you. So the shadow side stops you, right? That ego side stops you from achieving anything in this life. So if you want to join me in the 21-day challenge, please do. Think about what you want to manifest and go hard with it. Go to the gym every day. Eat healthy. 21 days is not going to kill you, okay? I'm having to tell myself that now. But consistency is the number one thing that will take you places in this life, right? Manifestation just doesn't happen like this. And it doesn't have to be hard. Just show up as the person you want to be and look at the positive, change your perspective on everything. So yeah, I hope that y'all enjoyed today's video. I truly love every single one of you, and I know that this journey is hard, but be grateful that you were chosen and you chose to go through this journey